It's around about this time every Thursday that investment author and columnist Mary Holm joins us to share some top tips about how to make your money work. And today we are discussing Bitcoin. Mary, kia ora to you.
Kia ora, Emil.
Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Where should we begin?
Well, can I just say, when I heard you were asking people to send in questions, I thought, oh, help, because I'm not an expert on the sort of financial
Ins and
side.
outs.
I mean,
Right.
the technical side of it.
Okay, so we shouldn't ask you to explain in depth how blockchain technology works on
That's
an
right.
atomic level.
Yes.
All right.
And which is actually part of the point in a way. I mean, I've always said people shouldn't invest in something where they don't really understand where the returns come from.
Uh-huh.
You know, if you look at bank term deposits, you get interest. If you look at shares, you get dividends and hopefully sell for more than you bought for. And with property, you get rent and hopefully sell for more than you bought for. So you can understand why you did well with them. But Bitcoin is a bit of a mystery. And I have to say, not only to me, I mean, I was just reading a report from a Wellington financial advisor firm called Bloomsbury Associates about Bitcoin, and they said it's almost impossible to determine its true value as opposed to the current market price. And they said there's no physical backing and no expected future cash flows. So its value is primarily determined by what other people are willing to pay for it. So I'm not the only one who, you know, doesn't really get why it's worth what it's worth. But having said that, there's a KiwiSaver fund that invests solely in Bitcoin, and it was the best performing KiwiSaver fund of all of them last year, with a phenomenal return of 142%. So that means it more than doubled, it almost 1.5 in a single year. So I wanted to talk to you a bit about that fund, because it sure is an interesting one, and also just the high volatility of Bitcoin.
All right. So, I mean, tell us about this fund. So it's called Koura, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Koura is the provider, like you know, RNZ or Simplicity or whatever. That Koura it's a fairly new KiwiSaver provider, and the word apparently means gold in Te Reo Maori. Although it can also mean crayfish, so it means gold. And there are some people out there, I suppose, who think crayfish are gold.
One of the same, exactly.
Yes, yeah. So they've got several quite interesting KiwiSaver funds, I have to say. They're fairly new and they're innovative. And they've got this one fund that did extraordinarily well last year that invests only in Bitcoin, in an American fund that invests in Bitcoin, I think is how it actually works. The fees on it are pretty high. It's they're 1.42% a year, which is a pretty high fee, I would have to say. And the fund's got only a bit over 2,000 members, so we're talking a very small fund here, but it's certainly an interesting one. And when I was reading what Koura said on its website about this fund, they pointed out that Trump has called himself the pro-crypto candidate before the election, and said he wanted to make America the crypto capital of the world, and so he's wanting to reduce regulations on it, and he's talking about the US government holding a strategic national crypto stockpile.
Yes.
And so you think, wow. And in fact, right, if you look at a chart of Bitcoin prices, right around the election, they absolutely soared and jumped up over the next, week or two. Since then, they haven't gone anywhere much. They've just sort of possibly the market's waiting for him to come true on his promise. But part of the point, if anyone's listening and thinking, yeah, okay, Trump's the president now and he said all this stuff, so I'm going to get in on this. The trouble is the market already knows that. We already, the people who are following this already know what Trump has said. And so that's already pushed the price up. And in fact, if Trump doesn't sort of follow through on some of these promises, that's likely to, push the price down again. And it won't necessarily grow anymore unless he makes more decisive moves, So to some extent, it depends on what Trump does. But of course, there are goodness knows what other factors feed into a price as well. It's always just like any share. Actually, you don't know what's going to happen next.
That people might have heard that number though at the beginning, 142% return over the year, and think, I don't really care what it is. A return like that is absolutely wild.
Yes.
Are there though? There must be risks to putting your money in something like this.
Absolutely, yes, and if you. Any investment that gives you a return like 142% a year is inherently risky. It must be. That's just the way it works. And Koura itself has been quite upfront, if you look on its website, about the risks. For one thing, it won't let any of its KiwiSaver members put more than 10% of their KiwiSaver money into this fund. Mm-hmm. So the provider itself is saying, hey, take it easy, everybody, and, put 90% or more of your money in our other KiwiSaver funds.
Sure.
So, and one of the comments it makes on its website is there is still a relatively high chance it may fall to zero, given the lack of obvious uses for Bitcoin. So, it's the ultimate really in high risk, high return investments. And Koura also lists no fewer than 10 different types of risk to Bitcoin. The volatility, the fact that there could be more regulation, despite what Trump says, he's not the only government in the world involved in all of this. They say financial institutions might refuse to process cryptocurrency transactions, and that would suddenly quite possibly make investors unable to get their money out. You hear about people with all this money in Bitcoin, but if they can't actually turn it into dollars and cents, it's no use. Then there's just general cybersecurity risks. There's risks that somebody else will come up with a better cryptocurrency than Bitcoin is, because this is specifically into Bitcoin. And various other risks listed there. And then we've got the Bloomsbury Associates, who I mentioned a bit earlier, talking about the risks that they had some numbers to go with it. They note that it has done extremely well in recent years. In fact, since January 2020, the price has multiplied 13 times. So if it was $100, it'd be $1,300 now. It's grown hugely.
Yeah.
At a time when the American share market's gone up a lot, it's gone up 80%, but this Bitcoin has grown a heck of a lot faster. But one comment that I liked that Bloomsbury Associates made was that people sometimes say, look, cryptocurrency could be really good if the whole economic structure of the world collapses, we go into some kind of apocalypse. And they point out, well, yeah, if the whole economic structure of the world collapses, isn't the internet likely to collapse as well? And so suddenly there you are in your post-apocalyptic animal skins crawling across the earth, and you're expecting to be able to get on the internet and get Bitcoin out. Not really.
I got offered some Bitcoin back in the day.
Yeah.
I'd written a piece about sport for this website, and they offered me, this would have been about 2011, 2012.
Really?
Yeah, and they offered me $50, 50 US bucks, or 10 Bitcoin.
I hope you took the Bitcoin.
And I took the $50, because what am I going to buy with 10 Bitcoin?
Well, these days, probably. What year was that? 2011.
It would have been worth about. I think it would have been worth about 800,000 New Zealand dollars now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. if I were offered that $50 or that, I think I'd go with a Bitcoin in a way, and just consider it
I don't want to hear that.
a little fling, because it's only $50. A meal, and you
$50 is a lot of money to me in 2011, Mary.
Yes,
No, fair enough.
Yeah,
no, I take your point.
No, I take your point too. Yeah, it's I'd certainly, if they'd been paying you big money or offered you Bitcoin, I would go with money. But but no, I appreciate if you were young and poor, you might have the $50 might have been the only thing between you and starvation for the rest of the week or something like that.
Well, certainly between me and something. Yeah. You talked about this earlier. It is at the core of this. It is in each of the warnings that I know Bloomsbury Associates said this as well. The thing about Bitcoin is it is almost impossible to determine its true value.
Yes.
The scenario that's kind of springs to mind for me, and tell me if this is an unfair comparison, is this sort of like if the Dutch tulip mania of back in the day, the bubble never burst?
It did burst, didn't it?
No, sorry, that's what I mean. If that tulip mania bubble had never burst, is that sort of what we're seeing with Bitcoin, or is that a bit ungenerous?
Well, it's similar with the tulip mania. Yes, the price of tulip bulbs just absolutely. I don't have the numbers in front of me now, but they were extraordinary because it became everybody thought it was going to get better. So there's that sort of greater fool theory that you say, well, if I buy Bitcoin, I'm probably being foolish, but there's going to be someone who's an even bigger fool than me out there who'll pay even more than I paid for it. And in the end, it all became worth nothing or next to nothing. Now, whether Bitcoin's the same, because it could become a currency and, well, I mean, it already is. You got offered to get paid in it. But one of the risks that was mentioned in one of the articles I was reading was that it won't become widely accepted. And I must say, since we first heard about it, it's not something you commonly hear people being offered pay in it, do you?
No, you don't.
No, it's not. It doesn't feel at the moment like it's suddenly going to take off.
Perhaps it depends on what you're buying, Mary.
Yeah. Look, you're really good point. If you're buying stuff off the dark web and that, I think that might involve Bitcoin a bit, mightn't it? Because there's the anonymity aspect to it. But look, I'm getting beyond my knowledge here.
I mean, I've got a lot of texts coming in, quite interesting texts. More observations than technical questions. We'll be glad to hear. Hi, Emil. Your guest is right and wrong. This person says, I was the CEO of Cryptopia before it got hacked to death, and one of the largest losses in this market in New Zealand. FOMO is all that drives the price of Bitcoin, fear of missing out.
Yes.
And we being humans are always looking for a deal. FOMO wins out. So buy some with your spare cash and hold is this person's advice.
Yeah, well, that's the same as the tulip mania, really, isn't it? And look, I do have to conclude that if you want to do a little bit of Bitcoin, as a play money thing,
right?
Why not? And you can do it and invest it in other ways other than through KiwiSaver, which I think Koa is the only way you can get into it in KiwiSaver. So if you wanted to put KiwiSaver money into it, you'd have to switch to Koa as your provider and put the rest of your money in they've got other good funds, share funds and bond funds, etc. But that's interesting, his observation, but I think it's sort of much the same point as we were already making, really.
No, that's fair. That's a fair comment. There is one last thing that several people have texted in around this, and some people might not want to invest in funds that invest in fast food companies, for example, or whatever for ethical reasons, whatever your ethics are. And several texts in along the lines of the environmental cost of cryptocurrency and the power needed to mint and mine it is underreported on and should be something that should factor into people's thinking around it, which I suppose is a salient point to keep in mind too, isn't it?
Yes, and indeed it is. And yes, all I know is that there's a lot of electricity use. I don't know more detail. Can I just say one quick thing?
Sure.
That I meant to mention before when you're looking at how volatile Bitcoin is? somebody looked over the last 12 years and compared it with American shares, which are pretty volatile themselves, over single days. So just over one day, the American share market 5 times lost 5% or more, and 5 times Bitcoin 296 times, so nearly 300 times. And in fact, there was one day, single day, where the value of Bitcoin more than halved, worse than halved in a single day, and that's extraordinary volatility. So anyone thinking of playing with it, you've really got to be ready for big drops in price sometimes.
Lovely stuff. Mary Holm, always really nice chatting to you. It's a
Thanks,
rare
Emil.
treat for me, so thanks very much for your time.
Lovely to talk to you too.
Perhaps we'll do it again sometime. That is Mary Holm, who is along every Thursday to share some tips on how to make your money work for you.